All right, at this time, we'll call to order the City of Kenai Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for September 14th, 2022. Will you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item A2, roll call, please.
Chair Tweed,
Here.
Commissioner Askin is here. Commissioner Woodard is here. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. Vice Chair Doffett is absent.
We got a few people coming down the stairs here now. Let's see.
All right.
There's Vice Chair
Vice
Doffett.
Chair Doffett is present. Commissioner Fikes is absent. Commissioner Greenberg is absent. Commissioner Halstead?
Present.
Down.
Got a bassoon down there or what?
All right, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Before we do the agenda approval, I want to do a couple things. I'll read the laydown into it. It's for items H2. It is an improvement description, an improvement sketch, and then a substitute ordinance 3312-2022, ordinance 3312-2022 planning memo to council, and a substitute ordinance 3312-2022 city manager memo to council. And then we're also going to, if no one has any objections, we're going to move the item F1 under public hearings to after our H items, so we can get these gentlemen on their way. So with that, could I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I move we approve the agenda with amendments.
Second.
Any objections? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Item A4, consent agenda. Commissioner Halstead.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Any objections? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Takes us down to scheduled public comment. We have none. Unscheduled public comment. Anyone wishing to speak to an item not on the agenda? Getting negative nods, so that's good. Consideration of plats under item E, we have none. And like I said, we'll skip over F. We have no unfinished business under G. Takes us to H. We have 4 items tonight. H1 for action approval is recommending to the Kenai City Council approve ordinance 3311-2022, determining that real property described as Lot 5, Block 1, Gusty Subdivision, Addition Number 1, according to plat number 83-126, Kenai Recording District city-owned airport land located outside the airport reserve, is not needed for a public purpose, waiving KMC 22-05.095 methods of sale or disposal, and authorizing the sale of the property to Aaron Swanson, DBA Forever Business Plaza, LLC. Can I get a motion, please? Commissioner Halstead.
I move we approve action approval item recommending the city council approve ordinance 3311-2022.
All right, second.
I'll second.
All right, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an ordinance based on Resolution 2018-12, which allowed the purchase of leased properties that had substantial building development. See page 29 through 31 of your packet. The policy was in effect until July 6, 2021. Due to an illness and a death, the prior lessee was unable to take advantage of the policy. Aaron Swanson, doing business as Forever Business Plaza, LLC, is the new lessee and would like to purchase the property at fair market value, excluding the lease constructed improvements. All notices and postings were completed per the code. The sale is consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. The Airport Commission approved the sale at their regular scheduled meeting of September 8, 2022, and planning staff recommends you recommend approval of ordinance 3311-2022. That is the end of staff report.
Okay. see if the applicant, you have anything you'd like to come up and add. I'm sure you probably do. Or we might have questions. Why don't you come on up?
Okay. Where do you want me?
Yeah, just sit, stand either one.
I'll sit stand.
Well.
Right there, there's a mic, that little black box.
Okay, gotcha.
And again, name and address for the record.
Aaron Swanson, my home address or which address? you want?
Be creative.
My home address 37190 Aspenwood Court, Soldotna.
All right. So, yeah, maybe, like I said, I don't know if you have anything to add that wasn't covered. You pretty well covered?
Yeah, I don't think, unless anyone has any questions. I
Okay,
don't think
let's
there's
check and
anything
see.
else.
Any commissioners? I got him up here now. Let's find a question for him. Vice Chair Dothett.
This might be for staff. Has there been any other lots that we've gone back on to reconsider for sale under this that hadn't taken advantage of similar circumstances?
Thank you for the question through the chair, Mr. Dothett. We had, under the original ordinance, I believe there were 5 parcels that had utilized that, and this would be the 6th. But no, we haven't had any other interest other in those additional 4 at this time.
Yes, I was just curious if we had gone, because the options was just for the current leasees to do it. This will be the first one where we've had a new leasee after the term has expired to go back essentially and do it. Correct?
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dothett, he had it transferred. It didn't expire. But the lease was still current, and it was transferred to his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I was just, again, this might be for the attorney to.
Mr.
ask the
Bloom?
question.
Yeah, so this is the first one of those properties that was addressed by prior legislation that the time expired, but we're asking to go back and allow the sale under those same terms. And the rationale provided in the legislation is because the prior lessee was going through some health issues and then passed away before he was able to take advantage of the legislation.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we were not like setting a special precedence or something at this point and seeing how it would affect. Maybe a quick question for the legality wise, is this going to be something that we would have to entertain for the other lots that may not have taken care of it for other reasons, or?
So, again, the legislation sort of separates this one from the other lots because of the health issues and the death of the prior lessee.
Thank you. That determines what I was looking for. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Askin?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dothett?
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted?
Yes.
Chair Tweet?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. We'll move on to item H2 for action approval, recommending the Kenai City Council approve ordinance number 331222, determining Lot 4, Block 1, Gusty Subdivision Addition Number 1, amended is not needed for a public purpose, and approving the execution of a lease with an option to purchase between the City of Kenai and Aaron Swanson for the property. We want to get a motion on this one and then move the substitute. Do we have a substitute on this one?
We do.
Okay. We want to approve this first?
You can just make a motion to approve the substitute ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then let's work that into the motion to approve the substitute. I would look for a motion, please. Commissioner Halsted.
I move we approve the substitute for the recommendation of the city council approve ordinance number 3312-2022.
Very good. Second?
I'll second that approval.
All right. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On June 28, 2022, staff received a competitive lease with sale purchase option application from Aaron Swanson, doing business as Forever Business Plaza. The proposed use of the parcel, which is currently vacant, is to eventually construct a Pita Pit restaurant. The parcel is within the central mixed-use district. All notices and mailings were sent per the code. The recently adopted Kenai Land Management Inventory and Recommendation List listed the property as not needed for a public purpose and recommended disposal for lease or sale. Funds from the sale will benefit the airport. The property is deed restricted with covenants and conditions that protect the ongoing operation of the airport, as well as the prior property. The current fair market value of the property was determined by McSwain and Associates on May 18th to be $110,000. The lease rate will be 8% of fair market value. The applicant will be responsible for completing development of the property within 2 years of the execution of the lease, and the option to purchase cannot be made until the improvements are completed. The Airport Commission approved the lease with option to purchase at their regular scheduled meeting of September 8, 2022. Planning staff recommends you recommend approval of ordinance 3312-2022, and that is the end of the staff report.
All right, thank you. Mr. Swanson, since you're still there, anything to add to that one?
I figured you might call on me again. So this one's a little more in depth than the previous one. So this is literally the lot next door to the previous one we just talked about. And my intent is to basically, as was stated, develop the property to develop a building and to create a house for our Pita Pit restaurant. And do it in a way that I want to build it in a way that allows us to expand on the property in the future if we get to that point, with no promises being made to that effect for the expansion part, but that is in the bigger picture plan for us.
Okay. Question?
Quick question. So looking like, is this going to be basically a structure to store or house the current Pita Pit trailer in? Is that
No.
what the plan, or is it separate?
Separate, yeah. So ideally for us, we brought the Pita Pit trailer, our food truck, to Kenai this summer and had it at the lot next door where the old car wash was. And until we can complete construction, we would still use our food trailer here, establishing our presence. But the idea of this is it's its own standalone structure, so that we can use our food truck and do, Wednesday markets and, events and stuff, which is where we truly want to use our food truck, so.
Thank you.
That was an R&D food truck, kind of, huh? See what the
We-
market looked like, huh?
We've been to Kenai before this summer, so yeah.
Anybody else?
Did,
Commissioner Hall said.
did you have a completion date on that? When you thought you'd be up?
No,
No?
within 2 years of signing my lease. So let me touch on that, and why I don't have a completion date is there's a lot of moving parts with this. One part is obviously this land space, right? The other part is I have to work with, because we're a franchise, I have to work with Pita Pit Corporate and work with them as far as what I'm trying to do is outside the box of what they would normally do on a franchise. And they're willing to work with me, but I've got to get all the parts and pieces in place before I sign my name to anything. So ultimately, I'm not going to sign this lease until I'm 100% sure I can make Pita Pit Corporate happy, make the city of Kenai happy, make me happy, right? So there's a lot of moving parts and pieces. My goal would be to have everything in place so that we can start actual construction by late winter, early spring. And I don't think it'd be that big of a build, but I don't think we'd be open until, late summer, fall at best. So realistically, we run our food trailer next summer, most likely, until completion of the project. That's best case scenario timing wise, but like I said, there's a lot of pieces that have to line up.
Mr. Bloom, on some of these laydowns, is there anything that needs to be explained? I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read through them, or is there anything odd or
No,
should be
there's
noted?
nothing odd. The only sort of nuance to this is probably the first time we've done a lease with the option to purchase that's, provided for in our code. And the option to purchase basically allows for the purchase at any time during the term of the lease after the minimum developments have been completed.
All right, anyone else have any comments or questions? Commissioner Dothett.
I would just to say, I'm going to be for this. I think it's great to see these underutilized lots having plans to be used for, right in the heart of the city. Seeing development is a great thing. New development in the city is going to be a plus for everybody, and I think these are some definitely underutilized lots that seeing some new and development happening, maybe it'll encourage more people to want to do the same. So I'll definitely be in favor of doing this, and I'm glad somebody's starting to take advantage of these lease to purchase options that are in code, and hopefully we'll see the ball rolling where more people will want to come out and try to do the development in the city and take advantage of these programs that we have, so.
I would agree with that. Anyone else? Okay, I think we're good. We'll call the roll, please.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Vice Chair Dothett,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes?
Chair Tweet,
Yes.
Commissioner Askin,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
I
Swanson.
think I'm done. Thank you all.
All right, item H3 for action approval is recommending to the Kenai City Council approve resolution number yet to be determined, approving the renewal of a lease or airport reserve lands between the City of Kenai and the Federal Aviation Administration for the automated flight service station facility on Lot 7A-1 FBO subdivision number 5. Can I get a motion, please? Commissioner Askin.
I move that we approve resolution number 2022 to be determined.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that for the motion for airport reserve lease land.
All right, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The city received a request for renewal of the Federal Aviation Administration lease for the automated flight service station. The FAA has leased the space for the purpose of operating a automated flight service station and satellite communication network facility dating back to 1983. The lease agreement is on Lot 7A1 FBO subdivision number 5. It's a 3.5-acre parcel and is about a 10,812 square foot building that the city built there for them. All notice and mailings were sent per the code. The parcel is within the airport light industrial zone. The lease is consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. Planning staff recommend approval of resolution 2022 unnumbered, approving the renewal of the lease on airport reserve land with the FAA for automated flight service station facility. That's the end of the staff report.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? Seemed pretty straightforward. I think we're ready for the vote.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes?
Chair Tweet,
Yes.
Commissioner Askin,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Vice Chair Dothett,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right. Move on to item H4 for action approval, recommending the Kenai City Council enact ordinance 3314-22, extending the time period for completion of the action items necessary for the conditional donation of an approximate 2-acre parcel to be subdivided from a portion of the 6.8-acre more or less portion of the east of Tract 4A, Barron Park 2020 replat, Kenai Peninsula Borough parcel number 04504501035 to Triumvirate Theaters for the development of a theater facility. Motion, please. Commissioner Askin.
I move that we recommend the city council enact ordinance 3314-2022, extending the time period for completion.
All right, second?
I will second.
All right. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ordinance 3219-2021 authorized the city manager to execute upon completion of a subdivision and necessary proof of financing for the development, the transfer of title on approximately 2-acre parcel near Dobbins Beck Family Park to Triumphant Theater for less than market value, and for the sole purpose of developing a theater there. Joe Rizzo, the executive director of the theater company, has kept the administration and council apprised of the progress over the past year and will be providing another update on their capital campaign and current plans for development to the council at September 21st meeting, where the ordinance is scheduled for public hearing. Planning staff recommends the Planning Commission recommend approval of ordinance 3318-2022. Nope. 3314-2022, extending the time for the compliance of improvements of it. That's the end of staff report.
All right, thank you. Extend you the same opportunity.
Well, I am never at a loss of words to talk about the theater. So, of course, in the wake of the February 2021 fire that destroyed Triumvirate Theater, out the road, the city had approved a donation. I think it was based on a 2-year limit. And of course, you never know how fundraising is going to go. So we are currently in a relatively good position, but we are committed to not turning over a shovel of dirt until we have the plans and the money to do those plans. So currently, right now, we have about $1.6 million right now, and the cost estimate on the building is $4.7 million. Chances are very, very good that the design of the building will be scaled back and get that to a place where we can actually build a facility that helps the nonprofit fulfill its mission, which is to help kids. So so currently we have 2 very large potential donations coming in. We have had a site visit with the Murdoch Trust. We are just finishing up our last bit of supplemental things that are due next week. And then the trustees will decide on our $500,000 donation in November. And then we actually remarkably made it onto the appropriations bill through Lisa Rakowski's office for $1 million. I have no experience whatsoever in that, but I'm assuming since it's government that it's probably going to be a while until we know whether or not that is going to make it all the way through. Most estimates that I get from staff are probably January, February. So we are in a position where we don't know whether we're breaking ground in 2023 or 2024. A lot of that's going to depend on how those things shake out. If both of those things were to fall through, we have until December 31st, 2023 to complete our $500,000 match with the Rasmussen Foundation. Currently, we are about $153,000 shy of that, which is pretty good for this little community to have been able to match $850,000. That's pretty remarkable. So that's why we're looking for an expansion of an extension of time, so that we can have our ducks in a row before we start getting into this major project.
All right. Anyone have any questions? Vice Chair Dothett.
And I'm assuming, is it being considered where hopefully you might be able to do like a 2-phase project if you don't have quite the funds you need for the whole project, or
Yeah,
is that something you guys
architects
are
don't
considering?
really like that very much, I found. They're like, oh, we'll just add on to the building. They don't.
Yeah, I'm experiencing the same thing. I'm doing the same thing. They didn't like it, but they did it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would certainly be like a possibility to design it that way. We are really just in the conceptual drawings phase of this, so there's, the sky's the limit, I suppose, as far as figuring that out. But we're gonna eventually, like, this design is probably gonna have to be adjusted. I can't imagine that, we're gonna do it exactly the way these conceptual plans were drawn. So, yeah, I mean, as a nonprofit, we're always looking for money for capital projects.
So I've got a couple of questions, I guess. The first one is there any disadvantage, is any of your potential revenue streams tied to having this extended now, or since you're still a year away, doing it later, closer to the deadline? I'm curious what the reasoning behind that is.
Well, I think the reasoning is because we don't know how these two big grants are gonna go. If both of those fell through and we had to do it with what we have, we would need 2023 to secure the rest of that Rasmussen match.
Okay.
And then at that point, I mean, we'd have about $1.9 million. You know, we could probably put, I mean, surely we could put something together as a stage and, you know, seating for 80 people, and, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So we are in a position where, because we don't know those two factors, you know, I mean, the other thing is that we pretty much have to wait until, I'm guessing, January or February to find out whether we get this congressionally directed spending or not. Because if we are getting a grant through the USDA Agriculture Department, that's gonna be a totally different deal, you know? I mean,
Sure.
it's gonna be all kinds of different regulations that we're gonna be facing with that. It'll be worth it for the $1 million, but it'll certainly slow the project down. I can't imagine it won't.
Sure. So I guess the follow-up to that is, so when you decided that this was the approach you wanted to take, how long has it taken to get to here? Like I said, I'm still just kind of curious why, almost a year out, why, if we did this in April or something, if some of that stuff, you kind of have a better idea of where it's going that way. And again, maybe Mr. Bloom may have something. I just wonder about this becoming something that other situations that are in a donation where they have 2 years, and I totally am on board with doing this, extending this. But I'm just curious if there's not any real danger yet of doing it. Why not wait a little longer?
Oh, why are we
Doing it right now?
Oh, I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
Well, this was actually recommended from Paul Ostrander.
Okay.
He said we probably should set this up now rather than wait.
Okay. Well, that answers my question completely then. Okay.
And this might be for
Vice Chair Dothert.
Staff or possibly attorney. When we set these two date, if we extend this, are we extending it for 2 years from the date it would have expired, or 2 years from today's date?
I believe it says 2 years from the July 26, 2025. So
Yeah, I think
three
there's a- yeah.
3 years basically from now, or roughly.
It's extending it from the original expiration date an additional 2 years.
Yep, giving you basically 4 years from the time you signed it. Yeah.
Okay. That's what I was curious about.
Yep.
And gosh, I hope it doesn't take us that long.
Anyone else? All right. Well, I appreciate that input. That was very helpful. And if you have anything? You good? Go ahead.
Is it required that we have to do a 2-year extension, or can we do another additional year past or just easier to do an additional 2 years? I'm just trying to figure it out in my mind. I don't know, staff or the attorney, if we did an additional year past the original expiration, or would that?
Mr. Bloom.
Thank you.
Oh. Okay.
So, I mean, you can recommend whatever you want to council. Right now, the ordinance that council is going to consider is for 2 years till 2025, but you could make a different recommendation if, you had a rationale or a desire to do that. The reason that we limit the time is that, we don't want these properties to be tied up without development for too long, which is why we initially limit them for 2 years. We don't want, somebody that, initially we think 2 years is the appropriate time for somebody to be able to, complete development. In this case, I'm not sure why Mr. Ostrander is recommending we do it now, but obviously in discussions with Tremont Theater, they've made the determination that a longer period is justified or needed.
I think that the catalyst for that probably was, if I remember correctly, was when we ended up on the congressionally directed spending list. Because we knew that would be, January, February. It's supposed to be in September, but it never happened, right? So I think because of that, we knew we were gonna have to wait until then. And I think that's probably why Paul, recommended that we do it. Because if we hadn't got knocked off that list, well, then we'd be in a position where we'd know by November, kind of where we are. But, I mean, either way, if we didn't get that funding, it'd still take us another year to raise the rest of that Rasmussen match.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Dothett.
Oh, no, looked like the staff had a question.
Yeah, and another consideration was the length that it would take to complete the survey. We looked at the deadline of 23 in that particular time, and contracting surveying and getting somebody to go out and subdivide it. You were pressing up against that, so keep that in mind when you do get everything in a row in order, that survey does take some time.
Right.
I guess that would be one of my questions. With the construction, would surveying the lot be considered part of the initial, that work is being done? Development? With just getting a survey done? I mean, that's gonna have to happen no matter when or what the building happens to be, right? Would that start showing that they're doing development? Or does it have to be completed within the 2 years?
That's correct. It has to be completed within a set time frame, not started.
Thank you. Thank you. That was it.
All right, anyone else? All right. Seeing no more questions or comments, we'll call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Dothett,
For this instance, yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Chair Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Askin,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will move back to item F1 under public hearings, Resolution PZ 2022-23, recommending the Kenai City Council enact ordinance 3316-2022, amending Kenai Municipal Code 14.20.150 conditional use permits to further clarify roles and responsibilities of applicants, the planning director, and the planning commission in the conditional use process. Can I get a motion, please? It's gonna die on the floor before we get a motion.
I'll get a motion
Vice
for
Chair
approval of
Dothett.
recommending ordinance 331420, oops, no, that's the wrong one. On the wrong page, sorry. Oh, we're going backwards, that's why.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, recommendation for resolution PZ 2022-23, recommending city council enact an ordinance 33162, amending city code for clarification.
Second. All right, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After all that, I don't have a lot to add. There's a sectional analysis, a very good one, memo from Vice Mayor Glendenning in the packet that goes through and describes the proposed changes, additions and deletions. And at this point, I'd like to certainly turn it over to him if he'd like to speak to it and have any additional comments to add at this time.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This ordinance amends the conditional use permit process. We have spent quite a bit of time as a council ferreting through previous discussions and decisions of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And what we found is that with perhaps some more structure to the discussion on how a conditional use permit is to be granted, modified, or denied would help would help all concerned. The one word that struck me was the word deference. And my seventh amendment, amend 1420.150G by adding language to clarify that while the commission does not have to give weight or deference to recommendations of the planning director with regard to whether conditional use permit should be granted or not, evidence presented to the commission must be considered. This means that if the planner provides evidence and the commission chooses to rely on other evidence or disagrees with the planner regarding the evidence, the commission would give an explanation. And all that does is set the predicate for a give and take discussion. I'd ask Mr. Bloom maybe to help with the definition of deference as from the legal point of view, please.
Sure. So deference is a principle of judicial review, which basically means that a body reviewing a decision where somebody has deference would yield to the interpretation made by the decision maker. So a lot of these cases, there's not necessarily an objective right or wrong answer, but you're using your discretion, and as long as the decision maker's discretion was reasonable, it wouldn't be overturned, even though there might be other potential avenues to address the issue.
Thank you. What this does is it firmly puts the Planning and Zoning Commission in the driver's seat, and they are the 51% or more in any of these discussions. My understanding of deference was a little more simplistic in general, and just looking from a student's dictionary, it says deference, a noun yielding of judgment with respect to another as a courtesy. All right, and then there's a big difference between a courtesy and an absolute. And I think that by defining how the responsibility of the planning director is to present the situation using code, land use tables, and his experience or her experience and reason, gives the commission adequate understanding and adequate menu to make up their own mind. You know, they may have a completely different view on the matter, and as long as they give a reason, that prevails. But all this does is set a predicate and a procedure for roles and responsibilities for not only the planning director, the commission, but also for the applicant. The way it is set now, and I believe is a good path forward, is that an applicant comes in, he wants a conditional use permit, he sits down with the planning staff, and the staff will explain the traditional uses of the area. We'll say that this perhaps may or may not fit in that area, but we'll also go through the ordinance and, more importantly, the land use table and say this is a good fit subject to commission review. Having said all of that, what this invites is a more thorough examination on the part of the Planning Commission and Council for looking at our land use tables, for looking at our zoning areas, and see if an area is adequately served by these ordinances or by these land uses. And it may be, as we found this summer, that something was changed from rural residential to RR1, which is more restrictive. There may be other examples out there. I'm sure there are, and sure in your mind there will be other examples of it. This invites us to roll up our sleeves and go through the whole Title 14. Not reinvent the wheel, but pick specific examples of where we can improve our process, improve our communication, and improve the expectations of an investor or a citizen or someone who wishes to apply for a conditional use permit. An example, you have, how can we say, a bed and breakfast situation, okay? we really don't have a good noise ordinance. You know, we might want to, we might want to, you know, wade in there and start there. That would be just one example. So with that, I'll take any questions.
All right. Commissioner Askin.
I do have a question about why we're putting in substantial evidence and how we're going to define that in any kind of a quantitative term.
Which amendment is that?
It's 1420.150, the
Number two?
number, section 1, 14.20.150, conditional use permits. The very last one, it says, must be based on findings supported by substantial evidence in city ordinances. That's the first one. And then the second one is under review criteria, it shall be established by substantial evidence. I'm wondering, I'd like to know how we're gonna quantify this, the word substantial, because that hasn't been in there before, and is that gonna stop, is gonna hurt us in trying to make decisions?
Make it easier for an appeal kind of a thing, you think?
Yeah,
I would-
because substantial in my mind could be, there's one thing that we're gonna make a additional condition on where somebody else would say, well, substantial, you have to find 3 things. I don't like that word, I guess, because I think it tightens it on us. I think it makes it harder for us.
Mr. Best.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have a definition in the current code. It's under burden of proof. In the last portion, the last sentence of that says substantial evidence is such relevant evidence a reasonable mind might accept as adequate to support a conclusion. So we have a standard for what substantial evidence is in the code already.
I understand that, but I think continuing to putting it in there as many times as we are, that, and we all know that reasonable is hard to define as well.
Vice Chair Dothett.
I just take it as it's just, we're trying to emphasize that instead of just getting yes and no votes, that we're clarifying that it is important that we have some kind of an opinionated evidence based on some fact, whether it be our feelings of this should go or not, some kind of evidence-based reasoning behind why we're saying yes or no to something. And I think that's what this is trying to encourage, is more of a clarification on our part when we're doing these yes and no votes. Yes, and this is why. You know, to try to encourage that is for not just the current commissioners, but foregoing future ones too, show that they have to show some kind of a evidence of why they're voting in this way or that. That's how I take that.
Mr. Bloom, is that kind of, I mean, you probably helped write this, I'm guessing, so is that kind of what we're looking for, is just to put some more emphasis on findings, or are we looking at something different?
Well, I did help draft it, but, you know, based on what was asked for by the sponsor, so I think that's a more appropriate question for the
All
sponsor.
right, well, we'll go let Vice Mayor Glendinning do it then.
We have a definition of substantial. Now we're looking for a definition of reasonable mind. Okay, and I think this is in the law lexicon also. When jury instructions happen, is this correct? That someone with a reasonable mind discerns or evaluates or takes into consideration the objectives, the statements, the context, their idea of reality, and make a decision.
Yes, through the chair. So a reasonable person is a, you know, judicial standard. For example, noise ordinances are often defined as something that would, you know, offend a reasonable person or an unreasonable level of noise. And that, you know, that's a standard that's upheld and what judges look at. Obviously, There's certainly different opinions as to what's reasonable, but we're working for something, you know, that's clearly outside of that norm or within that norm.
Anything to add
I
there, or you
guess
good?
the.
Oh,
the f-
Commissioner
sorry,
Askin.
Sorry. The first time I read this, I was kind of offended because it was feeling like you were telling us we didn't know what we were doing. And we needed this extra instruction on what to do. And so then I went back and I read it and I got stuck on this substantial thing because it's like substantial and reasonable. I get it. I get the judicial definitions of those. I'm concerned that that's gonna cause us some problems, that's all,
So,
that language.
I guess, to you for that, I was kind of wondering too, what was the catalyst that got this whole ball rolling, if there is one? Because maybe it is kind of trying to hold our feet to the fire more or something. I don't know, but I was curious about that as well.
What my rationale is that it invites us to be good students of our code, good students of our land use table, and good students of the realities in our community. Use the noise ordinance, a reasonable mind. Councilor Sonard had a presentation in front of us, okay, and the question was asked, chord playing on a piano during practice, would that be considered noise? Okay, well, a reasonable mind would say, no, I was a kid, I had to practice chords. Others might say, well, depends on how loud and all of that. But a reasonable mind, I think, with our life's experience and our understanding of what a musical process is, should be able to come up with a good idea of what is reasonable and what is acceptable, and what is something that a reasonable mind can accept as a positive or as an affirmative.
Vice Chair Dothett.
And I just had a little bit to add to that. And it was just going back to the getting offended by it. I don't see us getting offended by it, because I'm not looking at it as somebody who's been on a board for 10 or 15 years. We understand these things. But as somebody who just came on with little to no experience as a new commissioner, having it defined out that, wow, this must be pretty important that I should probably do this, and defining it out that way is more of an instructionary process and a training material is seeing this, not necessarily pointing at people that are on there and kind of understand the process, but for new people that understand that, well, when I say substantial and there's evidence, and I see this multiple times, man, I'm really maybe I should take a second and actually think about this a little bit more, or I should come up with a reasoning on why I'm saying this. And that's where I see it encouraged, because there's an ebb and flow. There's always new people coming and going. And when I first started, I didn't feel like I had really much of a clue what the heck was going on. And it's been just kind of jumping in full bore and trying to figure stuff out. Still to this day, I'm still learning stuff. And this also might encourage people to, well, let's take an executive session and let's go talk about it and see if we can come up with some positive findings and review our code maybe a little more and give some more meat to what we're trying to say and why we're saying it. And that's all I would say, is it helps define, and possibly for future people, help them be able to understand the importance of these and why we have to do it. If it's repeated and the wording isn't there to insult, but it's more to help as a training material, I think, and that's how I would take it.
So I have a question, I guess, an overarching question for Mr. Bloom then. Do you see anything in here, and maybe this isn't your job to answer, that is going to put us in a position where it's easier for somebody to file an appeal?
No, I mean, I think it's, no matter what you do, it's going to be easy for somebody to file an appeal. I mean, why not take a free shot at getting the city council to review your decision? I mean, that's sort of, we don't, if you want to, I mean, one way to prevent appeals would be, make good decisions, but also have a really high appeal fee. We don't have one. I don't know if it's $100 or $50 or if it's free. I can't remember, but there's really nothing stopping people from why not try and get a second bite at the apple. So
It's not exposing us to anything that we don't already have then, basically.
yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
this
Okay.
certainly doesn't make it easier to appeal.
Sure. Okay. All right, so Vice Mayor Glendening, I have a question regarding number 6 where it says, I'll read the last sentence. Conditional use permits by the commission must be based on applicable city code. So we often put quiet time in a lot of our conditions. There's not a quiet time in the code that I'm aware of. So does that hamstring us from being able to put quiet time in there if it must be based on applicable city code?
I think, well, two things. Is one, I use that as an example in my statement that we really don't have a noise ordinance. Okay, that's probably something we should work at. I think with say barking dogs and things like that, I believe there's a time limit. If a dog is making loud noise for 10 minutes or more, you can ask for interaction. Okay, there is a beginning of thought in this. But your point is well taken, and if someone would say that applicable city code, and I've heard it said here, we don't have city code addressing this. Okay, we don't, and would that lead to an appeal? I don't know. Would that lead to further legislation, perhaps creatively expressed by members of the planning and zoning to help us in our deliberations? I would certainly invite that. That's what I heard a lot this summer with a lot of the conditional use permits in areas that perhaps involve tourism and whatnot. How would a reasonable mind determine what noise is and who is how can we say offended by it? If we can, everyone's offended now, but I'll use that word. Thank you.
Because what I would see here is that this is we're running out in front of having a noise ordinance or having a definition of quiet time. So if this goes to council next week, is approved, now we've got an ordinance that we can't put quiet time on a conditional use permit if it comes without it being totally flayed open for an appeal.
Not really. We put quiet time on many conditional use permits.
But it's not based on applicable code, I don't think. So,
Well,
yes, Mr. Bloom.
So I would argue that in A subsection 1420-150, it says that it is recognized that there are some uses that may be compatible with designated principal uses in specific zoning districts, provided certain conditions are met. And it goes on to say that the conditional use permit procedure is intended to allow flexibility and consideration of the impact of the proposed use on the surrounding property and the application of controls and safeguards to assure that the proposed use will be compatible with the surroundings. So I would say that that is code that allows you to put whatever conditions you want on a conditional use permit to assure that the proposed use would be compatible with the surroundings. So if I was advising the Planning and Zoning Commission Board, I would say you're certainly able to put times on loud noises or whatever other conditions you felt were necessary to assure that the use was compatible with the surroundings. Although I would say it makes that look a little bit less clear, but I would definitely argue and advise you that you have that, that code supports those types of conditions placed on a conditional use permit.
And I don't think anyone's going to appeal based on quiet time specifically or on its own, but to me, it sure seems like that gives them another avenue, because you can, again, it's interpretation, and like I said, I guess if they specifically can look at that and say, well, I don't see anything in code that says there's quiet time, but I understand exactly where you're coming from. It just seems like it's an easier route to an appeal on that one. So, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I mean, I don't know if it's quite the right wording or not. If we put something in there, commission must be based on applicable city code if present or something like that. So meaning that if there's not a specific city code that pertains to it, we could still do other things. But if there was a specific city code, we would have to say which one it would pertain to.
Vice Mayor Glendening.
Yeah, didn't our city attorney say that you as planning and zoning commissioners have that ability? He outlined how he would advise and pointed where in city code that you can find this. That's my suggestion. All this I'm doing is offering you some tools and some consistency. I know we had, I was on the planning commission one time, and we had a conditional use permit regarding a horse. Okay, and I wasn't prepared at all. I made just a miserable explanation of my point of view, and Henry had to come clean it up. He was on the council, and I just thought, based on my unfortunate situation as I was learning, that maybe if I'd been asked to just dig in a little more or ask questions, perhaps I don't know if the result would have been any different, but we would have had a more cogent, clear articulation of how we felt about a situation as a planning and zoning commission.
Commissioner Askin. Commissioner Askin.
I guess my concern is I don't want to see us bog ourselves down to the point where we have to recite chapter and verse on why we're approving or not approving. And the part that I'm concerned about is I'd like to see us beef up what we can do for the infractors, the ones that have not been following the conditions of their conditional use permits. That it seems we've got some that, are habitually not following their conditions.
Vice Chair Dothett.
And I agree with that, and I've talked to staff about that, and I think we do have some good ramifications that could be done with enforcing some more, but right now it's just, honestly, it's lack of staff to be able to have an enforcement officer, so to speak. So I think that's going to be the first concern, is if we want to be able to enforce something, we can write all the stuff we want, but we don't have somebody that can enforce it or has the time or ability to enforce it. It's just not going to happen. I mean, there's finable things that they can be out there, but we just don't have it right now until we get new staff and possibly more staff that has just the job of just enforcement. I can see that happening. In this situation, one thing I was going to bring up is, what if we were to change to instead of commission must be based on applicable city code, the commission may base it on applicable city code instead of must. So it's still in there that we can mention the city code, but it may. I don't know if that would help anybody not seem quite as like we have to have it in there then or not. I don't know opinions on that.
Vice Mayor Glendening.
Yeah, I think our land use table, which is city code, should be used as a standard, if I can use that word, because if you say maybe, then all of a sudden we're the church of what's happening now, and you can say I feel this, and that's substantial for your decision. This invites a discussion, and I like the thoughts that you're bringing forward. But our code is flexible enough, but rigid enough that we can work within the ordinance, within the land use table. Our city staff, our city manager Paul Ostrander in the last meeting suggested that we initiate again having a code enforcement officer. Okay, to take the codes, to take the land use, to have the understanding that we have, and take the time to be able to work out some of these issues, the noise issues, the improvident use of equipment or boats or too many people in a building. These take time. These take time to work through. But if you have someone who can take the time, make the time, and use the time wisely, then our codes can be efficiently used.
And I definitely dropped the ball at the beginning of this because this is a public hearing, and we do have a city council member in the back that may want to speak. He's been very quiet, keeping his hand down if he doesn't, but I'm just curious if you have anything to chime in on.
Well, I think I should be sitting there next to Councilmember Glendenning and debating with you guys, too. But I'll sit and listen.
You guys got the wrong names. You're flip-flopped over here. Yeah. So, more of a point of a discussion. Commissioner Askin mentioned something about the not wanting to have to cite chapter and verse. That's not a bad thing. I mean, that's doing our homework. I don't think that's a terrible thing. I mean, sometimes you miss something or something, and so maybe your findings or the way you observe something isn't necessarily tied back to where it's at in the code. But again, I think it takes, if it was just code, if it was just that, then we could just let this guy do it. We wouldn't have to have the public hearings. And I think the human element of the public hearings, you can get a good feel during the public testimony of what the situation is, especially if there's some contentious stuff. And I don't think that is eliminated in any of this process. We
Not at
still
all.
got that, spine tingle, I think. So, like I said, the one thing, like I said, where it has to be, the only problem I have is that one encode thing, and like I said, maybe I'm kind of getting tunnel vision on that. I mean, most of the stuff is regurgitating what we already should be doing for the most part, I think.
an idea.
But go ahead.
Yeah, the staff report lays out the predicate, okay, we'll lay out the code, we'll lay out the land use table, we'll lay out previous practices, we'll lay out what the aspirations or design intent of the applicant are, and that makes it easier to, you don't have to go through Title 14. You just say, okay, here's what he's citing. Does this make sense to me as a person with a reasonable mind? And agree or disagree. And if you disagree, well then it should be right in line in the code section, in the land use table, where maybe you take exception to the presentation of the planning and zoning commissioner. But in all of this, it is stated and it is encouraged for the understanding that planning and zoning commission is the decider. You have the 51%. It's advice and consent. Gives the advice, you give the consent. I know. It's a little story, but we used to debate when I was over at the Borough gravel pits quite a bit, and we still are. And we still are. But through the debate and through the understanding, having public testimony and the obligations that a contractor has, we grew mightily in that understanding of how a particular section of code works. This process that we're going through, I think is vital to our understanding of how we respond to the community and how we respond to our respond to the responsibilities we have, I will say, as planning and zoning commissioners, to accept and interpret the code and make a decision. I've been at this a little bit, a few years, and I find that every time I sit down with something like this, I learn a little bit more. Okay, and I wish Mr. Best would stay just a little bit more. Maybe I'd pass 6th grade again. I don't know.
I've got his shoes tied together.
Yeah, but anyway, I put this together with the idea that it would give you a roadmap for understanding his responsibilities, and would give you a understanding of you can accept, modify, or reject what the planning director says. And the code that is cited, the land use that is cited, is laid out for you, and you have a choice, actually the responsibility to go look at it and be good students. And as we talk amongst ourselves, as we debate amongst ourselves, opinions are changed. We may come up with some ideas for code modifications, or say, well, maybe the people back in the day did have a good idea, and all of this is workable. This is a constantly moving evolving process, our understanding and our interpretations of how we handle the people's business.
I would like to have you clarify what amendment number 2 is with the city manager and the appeals thing. I'm trying to get my head wrapped around exactly what that's addressing, but we haven't talked about that yet.
Okay, advice and consent. Okay, say I want to bring a Target store to town. Okay, and he says no. Well, we'd never hear about it. Maybe we should want to know, why he doesn't want a Target store. Okay, that's all. He doesn't have to give his rationale. He doesn't have to be cross-examined. All we're asking is that it be reported.
So that one has nothing to do with us at all here at the Planning Commission. You're talking about at the application process, correct?
This would be more city council as advice and consent, but yet it would be informative to the Planning and Zoning Commission also on how the decision process goes.
But it doesn't change,
It doesn't change your roles.
our duck still quacks just like it did on that one,
Very loudly.
very loudly. Okay, yeah, I was trying to connect it to us and I didn't see it, but I know this is going back to you guys, so that makes sense. All right, Vice Chair Dothit.
I'm just going back to the number 6 where we were talking about it, and I don't know if it would make anybody else feel better, but we could just, if you just took out, right after commission, take out the must completely, and it still means the same thing, but it doesn't have that strongly worded must in it, but it still means the exact same thing. I don't know if that would make you, I don't know if that would hurt or make anybody else feel better.
That's a reasonable approach. Yeah, based on city code.
It's,
So make an amendment, or did I take your job?
we could, I don't think it changes anything. It's still exactly the same, it has the same teeth regardless, it's still,
It doesn't sound as strong.
It's
Does
gotta
it make you feel
well,
better?
nope. You want it,
Jeff, I feel better.
well, it would give us something to amend, I guess, huh?
Well, yeah.
So I guess, you know what, if you so choose to propose that amendment, we can do that. Vice Chair Dothit.
I guess I'll propose a amendment to amendment number 6, changing out after commission, where it says commission must be based on, to change it to just commission be based upon.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on the proposed amendment? Oh, Mr. Bloom.
Yeah, I'm just curious, I'm not sure I'm following what number 6 is in the ordinance.
Number
So-
6 is amendment to 14.20215E6. And it says, by adding language that clarifies the conditions placed on the conditional use permits by the commission must be based on applicable city code, just taking out the must and just be based on city code. No?
If you read the actual ordinance, there's no word must in the ordinance in that section. The only, word must is used in 1420-150A in the last part of the sentence.
Ours says must on 6.
That's not what I pulled up the drive.
Am I looking at a different packet or part of
No,
the packet?
I mean, that's what mine say. Mr. Best.
Thank
I'm
you.
looking at
What,
the memorandum.
the actual ordinance is what you would have to amend. That is a memo backing up the ordinance. So that language in the memo is just language in the memo, so you should concentrate on the language in the ordinance.
And that is
find it in the
on
ordinance.
page, just so everybody can speed to it.
I'm gonna withdraw the
16
numbers
and
and just give me a
17.
second to figure out where we're supposed to say here.
Right, so, sorry, Chairman Twait, if I may, so the word must is used in 1420-150A. The added language is, but must be based on findings supported by substantial evidence in city ordinances. The other just says, as provided for in city ordinance, including the land use table. That's what's,
E6 is here. Any and all, it's on page 18.
Can we just take a short at ease, please?
Where this wording is at might just be different than what this number is saying.
This language you have number 6 is not.
So I'm just looking at the memo, and that's where I was getting this from.
Oh, it must be based, so, because it doesn't use the word must, but it says has provided for.
Oh, so we just,
You have to. It means the same, but the word must be right, so it must be used right here, but must be based on for But you would, if you wanted to make it discretionary, that would be.
okay, I was just, so this is not, for this exact word. Okay.
Well, it means the same.
It means the same, correct. So, yeah, we just, in the memorandum, it's slightly different than the ordinance.
Because the memorandum has an interpretation of what's in it.
Okay, got it.
So it's like New King James.
I'm not sure, do you wanna change?
Well, if it's not, if the word, the hangup was just in the verbiage of
The only word is must is here, based on findings supported by substantial evidence in the code.
that we
This says
That was
must
eight.
provide for the board.
I could speak to that, please.
I rescind that amendment based upon it not being the correct portion in the memorandum.
Second.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Okay, see how we grew and learned? Okay, we went through it and made up our mind on the spot and found out the incongruities of my memo and found that code once again prevails. Thank you.
All right, is there any more discussion? All right, well, I guess we will call a roll.
Chair Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Askin,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Vice Chair Dothett,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted.
Yes.
Great, motion passes.
All right, thank you. We are now down to item I, pending items. We have none. J, reports. J1, City Council. Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the 7th of September, City Council met in chambers here, 6 o'clock, and we had a relatively light agenda. We had a public hearing on ordinance number 3304, 2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the airport special revenue and airport improvements capital project funds for the Kenai Municipal Airport Disadvantaged Business Enterprise and Programs update. And we passed that 7 to nothing. HDL was the lead contractor in this endeavor. We passed a ordinance number 3305, 2022, conditionally granting certain foreclosed city-owned properties described in Momsen's replat of edition number 1 to Central Peninsula Habitat for Humanity for construction of housing. What had happened was in a previous council had set aside properties for use for Habitat by Humanity. There was a neighbor that was interested in one of the parcels. The Habitat for Humanity and the neighbor had a discussion, and it was agreed that Habitat for Humanity would be happy with 3 parcels instead of 4. And the neighbor, I believe, is going ahead with the purchase from the city on that 1 parcel. What this does is it allows a generous time for development of the 3 parcels, I believe extending out 5 years. And this season's gone, okay? And economic conditions are not all that stable. So you look at it, we have a need for low-cost housing. These lots have been on the market or made available for most of their existence since they've been platted. So in my mind, the way I voted for it, it seems reasonable. They would have a path forward for individuals who wanted to use the Habitat for Humanity program and establish a residence, a home for themselves and their family. Resolution 2022-62, that was passed 7-0, supporting the Kenai Peninsula Borough's application for a safe streets, roads, and all action plan, authorizing the city of Kenai to be included in the joint application. What this is it's a federal program that provides funding for planning and perhaps even execution of safe streets. Examples were used. The road behind the high school. There's certain times of the year where there's football, there's soccer games, Oilers games are being let out, and the road's rather congested, or maybe the sidewalk isn't in good shape. Maybe the condition of that road, of that situation, of that neighborhood, of that thoroughfare could be upgraded to reflect the understandings and actually requirements of the citizens, not only in that area but in this town. And that's what this applies. What this allows us to do is support the application for a safe streets and road plan. Resolution number 2022-63, awarding a professional services agreement and corresponding purchase order for professional mechanical and electrical services for the Kenai Municipal Airport heating and ventilation and boiler replacement project. This passed 7-0. What had happened was that in the revamp of the airport, it was not provided for the boilers to be rejiggered, reevaluated, reworked. They were still had a significant amount of time left in their expected life. Time went on. The expected life of this 1 boiler was approaching maybe 5 years from the time it would have to be replaced, and it was found that it would have to be replaced. The other boiler seems to be working fine and would work very well as a backup or as a co-partner. And also, when we do repair or replace or renew this 1 boiler, the other one will go and eventually will go on rather, and eventually achieve its useful life, and we will have a staggered approach for replacement, for investment, for the capital required for the boilers. So this was passed 7-0 by the council. We referred to planning and zoning the conditional use permit ordinance, and we had a thorough discussion on that. We have quite a few new action items for this coming meeting. We're going to have some budgetary reconsiderations on how to maintain sufficient safeguards to protect public interest, but to provide increased flexibility for the administration to conduct city business. Basically, just allow the city manager and in connection with his department heads the ability to spend more money without having an ordinance. In past years, we've gone from, say, a discretionary amount of $2,500 to $5,000, and then the $5,000 is now has to be increased, and I think is a reasonable approach to efficient government. We're going to accept a grant from the state of Alaska for library materials We are going to increase estimated revenues and appropriations in the general fund for receipt of a vehicle forfeited to the state of Alaska. We're going to have some more an ordinance accepting and appropriating funds from the state of Alaska Department of Natural Resources to support the city's spruce beetle mitigation and hazard fuel reduction program, and authorize the city manager to execute a memorandum of agreement for this funding. This is very, very important for our community. As you look, what was pointed out to me as you look through the community, you go say over by the cemetery, or one road over where Rickett Creek goes through. It's a big gully, and you look down in there, and the beavers have taken some things down and built dams with dead wood, but there's a lot of dead wood in there. And those gullies, those ravines, are wind tunnels. And if something catches in fire, it'll get through this town in a heartbeat. So our focus is to take these funds, look at the areas that are most susceptible to causing havoc and damage to our community, and begin work on those first. This hazard, the spruce beetle program, is going to be with us for some time, where there are lots of trees to deal with, and we're over $500,000 in counting in appropriated funds, and we'll spend every dime of it. And next meeting is a week from tonight here in the city chambers, and that's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions? All right, we will pass on the borough planning tonight and we'll go to administration. Mr. Best.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your new director will be here next week, I think Monday or Tuesday. Don't believe we have any items for the next planning commission at this time, but Tuesday's our deadline, but we don't have anything for that meeting at this point. So she'll give her some time to get her feet on the ground and figure things out. Our admin arrived this Monday for planning, and Willie Anderson is training her this week. And so that's all going well. The code enforcement is, if I was going to comment as I go out the door, I think Commissioner Dothert said it best, those rules are only as good as you enforce them. I sent out 12 letters this week for code violations, and do we have somebody to follow up? I mean, I fielded calls the last 2 days for, it's what I'm getting at is code enforcement is very important. And what do you want your city to look like? And if investing that amount of time into a position or a half a position, I think is something that would benefit your city immensely. We had one at the borough, and it's not near enough, but it did add some teeth to it, and then you get into fine schedule, and let's take care of what we have, and let's enforce what we have, and then go after a noise ordinance, I guess. There's a lot to do there, and it's a time suck. That's all I can tell you. So code enforcement is a very important aspect of what the follow through for this group. Other than that, it's been a pleasure, and this is pretty sure my last meeting. Pretty sure, unless she doesn't show up, I'm going to go find her. No. Everybody's been really great here at the city. I've enjoyed what I've learned here. Megan has been absolutely stellar and great to work with. She tells me how to do things and ends up doing it herself, which I appreciate, because they just get done correctly that way. I suppose if I was to put more effort into it, I would get it right eventually. But that's all I have. I appreciate working with you folks, and you do a great job. The discussions are good, and you're doing a good job, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. We, I'm sure we'll enjoy our new planning director, but it will be a little bit of a sour pill to see you go to. So, and maybe Megan can answer this question. So, are we firmed up on our work session next week? Is that locked down?
Yes, it is. So the work session will definitely be taking place starting at 4:45 here in Chambers on the 21st.
Okay. Waterfront. to go an hour, basically, right? Before,
Yeah, to
right?
go an hour. And I will also note the packet for that will be provided this Friday at the same time as the regular council packet.
Okay,
will
great.
be sent out.
All right. Additional public comments. Is that a person out there or not? No? No. All right. Oh. Sorry if we didn't do it right. Okay, informational items, we have none. Next meeting, pending something to talk about, will be on the 28th. Commissioners' comments and questions. I want to call you Commissioner Askin now because your signs are backwards, but I'll say Commissioner Woodard.
Well, I was thinking I was sounding pretty smart tonight. So it's been very nice having you here, Max, and thank you for fielding a phone call from my husband this week. You calmed him down. Thank you.
Commissioner
Thank you
Askin.
Thank you for stepping in, Mr. Best. It was a pleasure to meet you and to work with you. So the definition of noise at our house is our daughter started violin lessons, and the dog howled every time she practiced. And when she got good enough that the dog stopped howling, she laid down the violin and picked up piano. So it was like, and then she went to drums.
Commissioner Halstead.
Well, I've been relatively quiet tonight, but I do appreciate the document that Mr. Glendenning's presented, and I think it's great information for anyone that's coming on. You know, I would agree that, you know, as someone who's been here for a while, there's a lot of information that we think we kind of know, but you know, there's always stuff to be had and kind of readdressed. So it's a great document, and look forward to implementing that. You know, and again, I would echo, our biggest problem has always been enforcement, but when it comes to discussions, I think having everyone here with differing opinions is extremely beneficial. And even though I'm right most of the time, I appreciate Mr. Dothitt's opinion as well. So yeah, and thank you again, Mr. Best, for stepping in.
Got to have a dissenting opinion somewhere. So. Vice Chair Dothit.
He's always gonna have that last word.
Exactly.
Sorry for his wife. Thanks, Max. We've had some good conversations the last few weeks, and appreciate you following up on a few things that you've helped me out with, and being a great help to a lot of things here in the city. And I hope you don't be too much of a stranger if we need you again. Hopefully not. But thanks again.
Okay, and I have actually one more thing, and maybe Megan knows the answer to this, and maybe she doesn't. With two commissioners that could possibly be on council, do we know, or do we have applications for commissioners?
Yes, in fact, on our website or at the clerk's office, there's applications for commissioners, and they can apply at any time of the year, and we keep them on file. But we will soon be advertising for the seats that are expiring this year. So we'll be collecting those and also looking to appoint someone if a planning commissioner goes to council.
Sure. So do we have any on file right now?
We do not.
We do not. Okay. So there you go. Go find somebody. Be awful quiet here with three of us tonight, if two of you happen to make it. So, okay. And other than that, I have nothing else to add. Oh, Vice Mayor Glendenning, last bite of the apple.
Oh,
huh?
my goodness, I just want to say, it's been a pleasure working with you once again, Max, and as always, it's informative and actually delightful, conversational, and lighthearted, even though there might be some hard lessons to learn along with it. He's always been the consummate instructor and purveyor of information and a voice of reasonableness, and his presence will be missed, and perhaps you can make a guest appearance someday, huh? Again? Maybe.
Hey, he agreed. I heard.
Begrudgingly. So I guess one last thing, and I don't know, it's, you know, we didn't expect to have you here at our meetings all the time, and you've pretty much been here the whole time. Since you're not running again, would we have another meeting where you would still come grace our presence, or could this be the last one we'll see you at?
When's the election?
October 4th, I think.
When's the next meeting scheduled?
Well, the 28th, but it might
I'll
be,
be-
but it might be canceled, is what
I'll
I'm saying.
be, I'll
So
be here eating candy, and you'll have to tell me now.
there'll be no meeting. So you'll be here on the 28th if it. if
Yeah,
we
I
have a
think,
meeting.
I think the way it works is that there's a time to, the election has to be certified and
So
all
there would
of
be an
that, so-
October meeting still.
So I can, there's an opportunity for myself to be inflicted upon you at least
All
one more
right,
time.
well, very good. Well, I didn't want to let you sneak out of here without some kind of a roast of some
We
kind.
may have an
so-
honorary name tag set up in the back for him, just to see what.
So, all right. Now I believe all the business is complete and the meeting is adjourned.
You had me at roast.
Can you imagine how much fun that would be?